Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the iOS Lead Essentials podcast. Here we discuss the strategies in your journey to become a complete senior iOS developer. My name is Bogdan. I'm a senior iOS developer and lead instructor in the iOS Lead Essentials program, the online training program for iOS developers who want to become complete senior developers. Today, our special guest is Luis from Honduras, a senior iOS developer and student of the iOS Lead Essentials program. Hi, Luis.
Hi, Bogdan. Really happy to be here.
Really happy to have you. So, can you tell us your achievements in the program that we'll be discussing today?
Yeah, I could name a few. For instance, being eligible for companies to work on, and also uh, improve or take my iOS developer skills to a new level. Those are my main achievements, and also get improvements in my income. Yeah,
Yeah, big improvements, right?
yeah, yeah, more than I expected.
Can you give a rough estimate? Like it doesn't have to be a concrete number, but
I could say that I tripled my income in one
wow,
year and a half or so, just applying the concepts that we learned in the program. Yeah,
wow, that's incredible. Congratulations.
thanks.
I think that's super motivational for other developers to see that you
Yeah,
can achieve these huge
yeah,
improvements so quickly.
yeah. It's feasible. It's not. Yeah, you can do it definitely.
So for the watchers today, stay until the end and you can learn how Lewis did it and how you can achieve a similar thing. Our goal is to find replicable steps that others can follow to achieve the same.
Yeah,
Okay, let's talk about your iOS journey first. So how long have you been an iOS developer?
I started with iOS since 2015. I usually, took a 9 month program locally. Helped me to understand very basic concepts or at least lose the fear, and becoming more comfortable with the architecture. That was like my first step as an iOS developer.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And then I started working mostly as a freelancer with whomever gave me the opportunity to do it, because that brought like a different challenge. Because locally there's no too many opportunities to be a native iOS developer, so I had to look abroad.
Right. So you've been doing this for, if my math is correct, like 7 years, something like that.
7 years,
Oh,
yeah, 7 years. And I could say that professionally for only 5 or so years, I could say that, because the first 2 years were more like experimentation and going through small opportunities.
right. And what did you do before that those years of experimentation?
I was working mostly as a software engineer, doing some backend development and also Java development as well.
Wow,
And yeah, Java was my strongest language before I moved to Swift, actually. Yeah.
nice. So you actually have a bit of experience with backend and
Yeah. But very few. I wouldn't say that not working. Uh, let's say I wasn't developing like RESTful APIs or things like that. It was mostly like a closed environment for companies. So we work in the something called back office processes, right? Something green screens that nobody wants to work with, and processes that talk with other programs mostly. So yeah, and that's why I decided to move to something more front endish.
then
Yeah,
iOS is a good choice, right?
yeah, it was because I bought a Mac and I wanted to to get the most of the investment. Yeah.
Cool. So how did you find out about the iOS Lead Essentials program?
Mostly through YouTube. I found Caio's and Mike material in YouTube, and yeah, that changed like a lot of thoughts that I have, regarding software development and iOS as well.
All right. Do you remember like some of the struggles you had at that time professionally?
Yeah, for instance, talking about test-driven development was like something really dark for me. I didn't know how to do it or what to do. and also, you know, finding an agreement in what is a view model, for instance, because there's too many sources that tells you what a view model is, for instance, and they go beyond what a view model is actually is, right? It's pure presentation. So those kind of things, uh, told a lot to me, and that's why I decided to join the program. Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, everybody uses view models, but they, if you look in more detail, like you see
Yeah.
different roles, different responsibilities there. So
Yeah, different flavors. They have some people have navigation there, some people don't have it. Some, yeah, many things.
how was your career going at that time? Did you feel like you were progressing, or like what was that like?
I felt stuck, definitely, because I felt like all the projects that I worked on were, or I was delivering the same kind of results mostly, and that means that they were not that uh, scalable. That's
Yeah,
that bothered me a lot during that time, and I thought changing them was painful. And yeah, that was the first one, just to mention, to be specific. Yeah, I
yeah,
felt like everything was too coupled, and doing a maintenance took more than it should. And yeah, I thought that definitely there should be a different way.
totally. Because I mean, architecture goes hand in hand with scalability. So unless you have a good architecture, there's no real
Yeah,
scalability of the app. So yeah, it's
yeah,
even though it's painful, I think that's a good experience because that's gonna push you to try to find some solution at the
for
point
sure.
where you see like this is not working, so I need to
Y-
find something
Yeah,
different.
you don't know you have an issue until you face it, right? So
Right.
that happened to me.
All right.
Yeah, additionally, I thought that I wasn't that eligible because the concepts that I had were like the result of eligible for work mostly. The concepts that I had came from different kinds of sources, and maybe what I had in my mind, for instance, the view model that I mentioned, I remember being rejected in a test project because they told me that my view model understanding wasn't correct, and yet nobody, when I asked for feedback, I didn't receive it, or the feedback that I received was not accurate actually from what I know now, right, regarding view models, and
Right.
that getting those sources also was an issue for me. I needed definitely to get like a source of truth and start moving on from there. Yeah.
Right. So would it be fair to say you also had some issues with the interviews? Because you
Yeah,
mentioned this situation. Okay.
yeah, because I didn't have like a very deeper understanding on how to structure an application, even though you may end up having like a lot of knowledge for core location knowledge or push notification or any part of the iOS stack, but how to make that work together in a clean way was definitely not there for me in that time.
Right. I can relate to a similar point in my career as well when things didn't work out
Yeah,
as you said. So, but yeah, that's also the driver for learning new stuff. So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm just curious. Do you remember what was the thing that frustrated you the most in your day to day work?
Yeah, I remember. I think that the lack of tools to apply concepts, definitely that was annoying because, as I mentioned, I wanted to upgrade my knowledge and I didn't find a way to do it. And there I was hitting against a wall, trying to improve with without the tools. And
Right.
definitely, the lack of tools, it's something that will be painful for everyone, definitely.
Right. What do you exactly mean by tools?
For instance, some concepts may be really abstract. I recall solid principles, just to name one. And when I went through the description of what solid was, I only understand the first one, the letter S, single responsibility principle, because the other ones, the explanations that I found were so like, reading astrophysics or something like that. It was like, what is this? Especially the open close principle. And
Yeah,
yeah, just to name a specific one, right, or a single one, it I struggle a lot reading about that, and yeah, I didn't know how to apply them until I went through the program. Yeah, that's the
right,
only.
right. Because yeah, this happens a lot where developers just read about the solid principles because now they're mentioned in several places out there if you read articles and books. But
Hmm.
it's like you said, at first glance, they're not very clear,
Yeah,
especially when you want to apply them. Maybe you like understand the definition, but to put it in code, it's a different thing. So
yeah.
yeah, I totally understand, and I've seen that some of my friends are struggling with these as well, and myself included.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and the
yeah,
fun thing is that they are like all the Java specifications says that you should know solid principles, and I'm pretty sure that whomever wrote that in the job specification doesn't know that actually.
yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Right, because the reason I ask you why you call these tools is you're not referring to tools like, I don't know, like a third party tool or like Cocoa Pods or something like that. It's more like principles and uh,
Yeah.
more abstract concepts and tech like techniques, things like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because those can be applied to any language. I
Yeah.
mean, or to any platform. You just take the fundamentals and the concepts and apply them would be easier. For instance, you should only need to know how to implement an abstraction, right, on Kotlin, let's say, or on TypeScript. Sorry, I'm not like a JavaScript uh, expert, but yeah, you just only need to find how to do that, and then
Yeah.
all the concepts come with that,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, I think this is one of the advantages you have coming from a background where you did Java and other languages, where you have this like a bit higher level picture and not just focus on one language, Swift in our situation, but have this like more generic view and say, okay, what are the things that are abstract of the language and the platform, and you can port to a different environment, different job if you want, different to, like profiles.
Definitely, and knowing some or learning something new enrich what you knew before. Because I completely understood Java interface until I learned protocols in Swift. So I thought, oh yeah, interface are very similar to protocols. I said to myself, and yeah, everything match then.
Right. Yeah, and I think it clicks when when we see them as okay, what's the language feature, which is the protocol or the interface, depending on the language, and what's the underneath concept, which is an abstraction. And like you said, you can do that in every language in a different way, but it's still the same, more or less.
Yeah, yeah,
So cool. Okay. So just to recap and get going with our conversation,
sure.
you mentioned you had struggles with interviews, with just scalable solutions, learning all these concepts we mentioned, like solid and more. And then you found out about the iOS Lead Essentials program, and you decided to join since we're here today.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that for a minute. Like, how did you decide to join? If you have any second thoughts, like, what was that like?
I remember when I read the news, I started with the crash course, if I recall correctly, and then you know, Kai and Mike talk about BDD, TDD, design-driven development, and I was like, what is all of those stuff? And that's what I like more about the program, that it wasn't, let's say, framework oriented or yeah, something like that. It was more fundamentals oriented,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And that what we were talking about. If you know the fundamentals, definitely everything comes, and yeah, that was, I didn't have any second thought, definitely. And I wanted more. That crash course tricked me, actually, because when I see the three lessons, I need more of this. And yeah, I waited until the cohort was opened. Yeah, I didn't have any second thought, definitely.
cool. How did you see this? Like, what was it a significant investment for you? Did you get help from your company with that, or did you do it on your own? How was that?
I did it by myself. Actually,
Okay.
it was a personal investment because, as I mentioned, I wanted to invest in myself, right? And because it was me who wanted to be more eligible for better opportunities, right? For
Right.
getting better career opportunities. And that's why I decided doing that personally. I mentioned in my current company at that time that I was joining the program, but I didn't get like, the support that I was expecting. So yeah, my wife told me it's for you and do it yourself, and you'll get the outcome for
Yeah.
yourself as well, right? So yeah.
Right. And from what we discussed in the beginning, you did. So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
very
yeah.
very nice.
Faster than I thought. Yeah, yeah,
It's better that way.
yeah, for sure.
So you joined the program, and what was your experience with it? Like at first, what was your initial thoughts when you joined?
Yeah, it was mind blowing. That's the only thing that comes to my mind right now, because all of a sudden that I was learning about, I don't know if I can talk about the topics of the program, but for instance, solid principles at the beginning, and that was I was looking for previously, right? And I dive into it and I start studying, reading the first lessons, and going back and forth and coding
Right.
along. And yeah,
Okay.
it was really cool.
So you coded along.
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah. I watched the lessons like three times and then I coded. Yeah.
Wow, nice. And how much time did you invest? Like every day or every week? Like,
I tried to spend one day, it, sorry, 1 hour per day.
one
That
hour
was
per day.
my goal, and I used the Pomodoro technique that the program describes, and it worked really well for me,
Yeah.
because you cannot, get rid of the your job and the things that you have to do daily, right? So yeah,
Nice. So by doing 1 hour per day on average, because I guess not every day is the same, but the average 1 hour,
yeah.
how long did it take to finish all the lectures?
I put a goal of 8 months, mostly because I added like extra 2 months, just in case that, as you mentioned, every day is different. So I said to myself, okay, I can do this in 6 months, but you never know what every day brings, right? So
Right.
I decided to add those 2 months, and it worked because I actually completed the four challenges of the program. Around 7 or 8 months, and then I started with actually the I'm still on some bonus lectures, just because I took the second year of the program to code along only and applied
Right.
all the concepts. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So let's circle back at some of the issues you mentioned in the beginning,
Hmm.
like interviews was one of them, uh, building scalable architectures in apps,
Yeah, those were like the most painful
yeah,
ones.
and
Yeah.
just learning new things. I guess you also mentioned that. So
Yeah.
how do you feel the program helped you with these? Like, are they in a better state now? How did that change? Or
I could say that definitely every knowledge that I had before joining the program was useful to go through the program, and the program was like a roadmap of how you know using that knowledge. Actually, that's what I like the most about the program. if you have some experience as an iOS engineer, uh, you would may or the program will help you to organize your knowledge, and you know will
Right.
drive you to get the most of it. That's the best thing about the program. And definitely that was like life changing to me, because they taught me how to learn. The program taught me how to learn, because
Yeah.
when we are going through some lectures, then all of a sudden, let's say there's a UI kit topic, and there's a link to UI kit lectures, and you learn key topics about something that you already knew, right? And
Right.
that helped me to going further in interviews, covering other things that I wasn't doing before.
Right. I think that's a very important point. At least, of course, well, I was a student too before becoming an instructor, and when I was going through to some of the lectures, it's like you said, there's links to documentation, everything, and the minute I read some documentation, I realized, okay, I never read this before. Like I used an API, I don't know how many
Hmm.
times before, but I never actually read the documentation. So I kind of maybe assumed how it worked, and
Hmm.
giving the opportunity to actually check that, it's very important, because as you said, when they ask you these kind of things in interviews, they usually know. So uh, yeah, if you're just rambling and assuming, like, you're probably not gonna get it.
Yeah,
So that's one thing, because it's like you said, like we are learning how to learn as part of the program as well.
yeah, for sure. That's why the program gives you the tools to move to a different platform and apply the exact same knowledge, because you already know how to study, right? And
Right.
what's important and what isn't. Another thing that I liked about the program is that it helped me to get the most of the WWDC, for instance, because there are some lectures maybe from 2017 or 2015 that were so important for any
Yeah.
iOS developer to
Yeah.
go through, and you didn't, just because you were more focused in, let's say, learning Combine or Swift UI, right? But those things were really important, and there are some of them oriented to TDD, and they were key to improve your TDD. So I like that the program also helps you to get the most of conferences. That's definitely cool.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's another thing, because I guess a lot of developers, and myself included, just used to watch WWDC videos as my regular day-to-day TV series, right?
Yeah,
Just watch, and you I felt I was learning, but as you know now, and I also know, it's not.
yeah,
So unless you're doing some, like, practicing, unless you're researching some of that, like putting it to practice, see how it goes, writing it down, whatever process you have, but unless you do something with that information, it's most of the time gonna just go away, and you've invested hours that you're not getting back. So
yeah,
uh, yeah, that's also important, because uh, it's it's super clear when you're going through the lectures that if you don't spend the time to practice, you're not getting it. So um,
yeah. That's it. Practice is a huge part of the learning process. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, because it's the precursor to being able to, what we call, execute, so putting it into your work project. So unless you until you are able to do that in other contexts, like simpler contexts, it's very hard to, like, just learn something new overnight, and then the next day you go in your office and say, okay, I'm gonna do TDD on my project. Like,
yeah,
that's not a that's not an ideal situation. So it's like Robert Martin says, it usually goes wrong if you're trying to put these skills directly into your big work projects. It's usually it leads to failure.
yeah,
So what we encourage people to do is to practice, and practicing is very important for many professionals, not just developers, right?
Yeah,
Musicians and doctors and every day they practice. So
yeah,
we gotta we gotta do it too.
yeah, for sure, definitely. And yeah, that's something that those challenges that comes because everyone knows that, or each one of us knows that we need to learn, but we don't know what to learn, right? What to
Right.
study, where our pain areas are until we get them exposed. And that's something that I forgot to mention about the program. It helped me to expose where my failures, right? Where my painful areas were.
Yeah.
And that definitely it's like being in that mirror and knowing what to improve. It's priceless, definitely.
Yeah. Even though it probably feels a bit uncomfortable
Oh
when
yeah.
you learn these about yourself. Uh,
It's painful. It's painful because you thought maybe someone told you you're a senior iOS engineer and you were very proud you were a
yeah.
senior iOS engineer. But this program shows you actually, are you really? Then if you're not, this is how you will be, right?
You're right. Yeah. There's a clear path
Yeah,
from whatever point you're at to that final goal. And yeah, that's one of the things I love most about the program is the thing that it contains all of the information you need. So you don't need to like divert your attention and do a bit of this and a bit of that, and it's like mm, trying to learn new concepts from other languages and see how they apply to our platform and language. They're all joined together and clarified for our particular situations.
definitely.
Awesome. How about interviews? Like, how did it the overall interviewing experience change for you?
The key part was that when I faced new interviews after going through the program, that or the something that made a difference is the fact that I was more confident about my knowledge and about my skill, and definitely that changed everything in an interview. If by the end of the day the interviewer feels more comfortable than you have like a lot of opportunities to pass the interview, because the knowledge that you, if for instance you're not confident and you feel like very anxious, that will that plays against you.
Yeah.
And if you being confident about your knowledge will help you to decrease that level of anxiety. And definitely that changed everything for me in
Right.
going through interviews. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, because I mean, there are interviews which are more technical, and yeah, definitely the lectures and also the confidence is very important there. But there also, like at least in my case, I went through some interviews where they didn't ask me any technical questions or
Mm-hmm.
not in detail, just like a high level conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And over there, the confidence is even more important because that's the only thing you have. uh,
Yeah.
they, they they're not going to ask you specifics if you're recommended or something like that. They're not going to ask, okay, tell me how ns objects deallocates and or I don't know
Yeah.
thing like that. But they mostly look at your attitude. So it's very important to have that confidence. So, okay, this is how I work, this is
Mm-hmm.
what the processes I follow, this is how I assure I deliver quality. um, you
Yeah.
can talk about the principles you mentioned, and also things like continuous integration, continuous delivery, having automated tests. All of that um, is what I think is a big like important piece when they make the decision. Okay, is this the right fit for us or not?
Yeah,
And
it is. Another thing that helped me is that in my gig, the gig that I got after joining the program, the first one, uh, in about 3 months or so, I joined the interviewer team. So I
nice.
was doing interviews as well, and that gave me like another perspective of how interviews are. And not always it's about being the most qualified developer, as you mentioned. It's about a lot of things: attitude, uh, punctuality, that you're always on
Yeah,
time, for instance. I mean, those things are important as well. And it's not everything about being a good developer, right?
yeah,
And yeah, I also that helped me, to know that asking for feedback, or getting feedback in interviews, it's always beneficial for the whomever it's going through the interview. And yeah, definitely that also helped me a lot.
awesome. I also did a lot of interviews myself in a part of my career, and
Mhm.
I, now that you're mentioning your experience as an interviewer, I also recall some of that. So it's like you said, you look at it from a different angle when you're actually doing the interviews,
Yeah.
because at least sometimes for me, like the candidate had all the right answers, but I had a feeling like I don't like something is off with this person. Like we, I don't know, we have a bad chemistry. We So it's like you said, there's so many details. Like was
Yeah.
he on time? What was his attitude towards the interviewer or interviewees?
Yeah.
What questions did they ask? Did they prepare? Did they research about the company and about the position they're applying for?
Hmm.
All these kind of things. And the technical part is just like there's a part, but there's one of many in all these uh, sections, if you
Yeah.
want, or areas. And sometimes you make a decision. Probably I read somewhere that you probably make the decision based on your emotional state. So if you felt like a good chemistry with that person, and you felt like,
Hmm.
okay, yeah, it's reasonable what they say, you can even, I don't know, forego some mistakes they made in the interview.
Yep.
And it's the other way around as well. So if they responded to every question you had correctly, but you still have something that's not not in the right place, and you're probably gonna give a maybe not a bad feedback, but a less than great one. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's part of the candidate,
yeah,
not only the technical skills, right?
yeah, I think it's a very humane, if I can call it like that, experience. It's very subjective. It's
Yep.
not gonna be like great. You're getting grades for each technical aspect, and if you have the right uh,
Yeah.
score at the end, you got it, and otherwise not. Like it's a bit more complex than that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I even had cases, like maybe you can tell me if that was the case for you, where I interviewed a more junior person, and even though they definitely weren't technically qualified, I still gave them a big, like a very good feedback, because I said, oh, okay, I want to work with them because I think in 3 months they can fill that gap and be an excellent addition to our team.
Yeah.
Did that happen to you?
Yeah, it happened to me. It was a nice surprise to find some candidates that only worked as iOS engineers for 2 years, and they had a very very advanced level. I mean, they were seniors without a doubt. And sometimes people says, "Oh, you have only worked for 2 years as an iOS engineer. You are a junior for sure." And it's not about time. It's not about how much time did you
Yeah,
spend in the office, right? It's more about what you know and how can you apply that knowledge.
right. Yeah, that's another great point.
Hmm.
I think nowadays our industry is just basing a lot of decisions on the number of years you have in your CV as a developer, and
Yeah.
as you just said, and sometimes it can go wrong in both directions. So you see people with very few years of experience who show a lot of like great skills and everything, and you see other people that have many years of experience and don't have these the same qualities because they didn't learn. And the fact that a year passed on you on a job, it doesn't mean you learned anything. It's just another year, right? So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, definitely.
I hope that someday this maybe changes a bit. And but nowadays, like, recruiters even triage CVs like that. So if they're looking for like a mid developer, they won't be looking at CVs with 1 and 2 years of experience, which is their loss, but it is
Hmm.
what it is.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Another thing which I like about our community is, and I need to explain this for the viewers. So we have a belt system where only the instructors can award you with a promotion, and we have a criteria for each of these belts. It's like belts in martial arts. You get from a white belt to a black belt, ideally, um, and yeah, we have this like unified system, and it also gives you a new objective every time. So you have the next position, let's say, or the next belt in front of you to, and you know what you need to do to reach it. But it's also
yeah,
more uh, it's more standardized because only the instructors can change these.
yeah,
So it's not somebody says, okay, now I'm a senior because I have these many years. Like, no, it's more based on actual results. So I
yeah.
like that.
And achievements. Yeah, that's definitely a good way to track your progress, right? To know where you're standing now, and yeah, that's definitely good.
Right. Going back, I want to ask you a few questions about some of the achievements you mentioned at the beginning. I think those are very impressive, and not just uh, a salary increase. You said like almost 3 times in 1.5 years, but that is impressive. And also overall, just being more confident, being able to do better in interviews, like all of these things just I think make your career skyrocket. So it's definitely at a different level now. So let's talk about this for a few minutes.
Hmm.
So first of all, how long did it take until you started seeing these results after you started the program?
I would say that after the third module of the program, which is the UI oriented one, that helped me to understand, that connected like a lot of dots in my
Right.
knowledge. Yeah, that one was, yeah, definitely a milestone because you understand that UI elements are just UI elements
Right.
and they should only obey render this, do this,
Yeah.
do this. They shouldn't know anything about anything, right? And that one, was like a click for me, definitely.
Nice. How long did it take to get there? Like around 6 months, maybe?
Yeah,
Or-
around six
okay.
months, maybe five. I recall that, yeah, that one I spent most of the time on that part of the program because I found like something that this I found like the core painful thing in my
Right.
career path, and that module helped me to release that knot, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think since we are doing iOS apps, which are so visually focused, we definitely are working a lot around the UI and the
Yeah.
UX. And it's always this question like, how am I going to deal with that? And there's all these conversations now. Should I use
Hmm.
MVC? Should I use MVVM? Should I use
Yeah.
whatever other pattern? And yeah, that module really deep dive into all these patterns and how you can interchange between one or the other, and
Hmm.
how to set, like you said, just have a very simple view layer that only presents the data instead of
Yeah.
having all the logic there, which makes it very hard to maintain, very hard to change. And Um,
Yep.
so yeah, that's a good one.
And the composition one, I don't know if I can mention the module.
Yeah, definitely. It's a pattern.
Yeah, the composition module, the root module. That one was also another part of the program that helped me to reduce the amount of development time, because sometimes if you have a very coupled screen or the controller with other logic that it shouldn't be there, you need, usually what you do is run your application and go through the entire flow until you reach that screen.
Right.
And when you decouple them, you can render it from wherever you want, from a snapshot testing, and that reduced like the amount of development. I cannot
Yeah.
give you a percentage because I haven't measured it, but yeah, it was definitely a huge amount of time that I reduced.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, I'm so happy you mentioned this because not a long time ago I was mentoring some local team here, and I was reviewing what they're doing. So they were working on an app with a flow
Hmm.
with many steps. So it's like next, 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 and
Hmm.
get somewhere. And they were working on, I don't know, the ninth screen or something like that. And every time the developer who was showing me different things needed to like change something, or like every time he just start the app, and if it's not logged in, then log in, and then go to each of the screens, and each screen requires some inputs. So it's not like a simple button press. You
Yeah.
have to like this is where I need to input two numbers, and it's like, and the whole thing every time took like, I don't know, 20-30 seconds at least.
Hmm.
So he would do that every time, and it's
Yeah.
like, okay, we need to discuss about this because you're throwing away a lot of development time
Yeah.
in doing this thing. And it's like you said, if you have these screens, just in the composition route, you can compose it differently. So you can say, I just want screen, the ninth screen, whatever that is, on, because I'm working on that, and that's it. Like, inject the dependencies, and
Yeah, definitely. That was a huge gain for me.
yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. And of course, like you said, with tests, you even debug less. So only in exceptional cases. So it all add up to a shorter development cycle. Um, at first, it sounds like, yeah, but we don't have time to decouple and to write the test. But you're throwing all that time away on I don't know, doing repetitive things like that, or maybe debugging a crash for 5 hours, and they all add up. So
And sometimes you just want to see like a change in a constraint. If you're working with UIKit or a padding, if you're on SwiftUI,
yeah,
and you went through the whole flow just to see
yeah.
like that small change, it doesn't worth it.
Yeah, and it's not right
Yeah.
from the first attempt. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
back to the code, change it again, go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's those are the pains.
Yeah.
We went through them. It's nice to see that there are other ways to deal with this. So
Yeah.
okay, so I still want to find out more about
Hmm.
these achievements I mentioned, because we kind of derailed a bit, and I'm very curious, like how did you achieve like that big increase in salary and everything? How'd you do that?
Yeah. I started. Sometimes I'm not here to give an advice, but if you have already negotiated for uh, a specific amount of salary, sometimes getting like a 50% raise could be hard.
Yeah,
So I usually decided to switch job, and as I mentioned, 4 months or 3 months after starting the program, I got an offer for a 2x improvement, and definitely it wasn't feasible for the previous company that I was
right.
working on. So I decided to move, and then after a year of being in the new company, I got another offer, and I recall that I decided that I could do better, and I started doing some interviews. I did 3 interviews, and I got two offers from those two interviews, but I choose for the current one that I'm working on right now. And yeah, that I decided to switch jobs mostly.
Right. Yeah, 'cause I think it's easier when you switch jobs to get a higher salary increase, as you said, because most of the companies have these ranges and everything. So once they hire you, it's not impossible. It happens for some people, but it can be hard to get a significant increase unless you're really delivering some big change in the outcome you're producing. So
Yeah,
uh, okay, and since you managed to, like, yeah, that's a, like I said, an impressive thing to accomplish. How did it affect your life? Like, did that change in any way, or
definitely it helps you. I'm gonna be crystal clear. I wouldn't be living where I live, being just a developer, for instance, because I'm a digital nomad right now, and that helped me, to get better offers than the ones that I could get locally in my country,
right?
and that's a big impact because I was living in a place where only vice presidents live. For instance, in other companies they were vice presidents or
Right.
were in executive positions, and I was a guy, a middle-aged guy that didn't belong there, right? So definitely that changed a lot of things, and it wasn't my main goal, but definitely it brought a huge impact. Yeah,
Right. I guess you feel better about yourself as well,
yeah,
because it's
yeah,
kind of a, I don't know, reward that what you're doing works. So yeah, I am getting to a new level in my career. So it's very satisfactory to see that.
yeah. That in the matters of the income, and right now where am I? Also, they want me. They see the experience and the knowledge that I have, and they are helping me, to reach the next step, like let's say an EM position, and that's also something that I'm really up to because yeah, I want to move forward as well. And my main goal is becoming an architect very soon, or yeah, that's what I'm aiming for. So yeah,
Cool. I guess by EM you meant engineering manager.
that's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, that's correct.
Uh, I wasn't sure if my acronyms were
Yeah,
still working fine. So thanks
yeah,
for clarifying that. Okay, so it's either a leadership position or more of an architect position. Like those can be different careers. Um, they probably are,
yeah,
because in the architect one you're not dealing with other people's careers as much, but they are both challenging and interesting. So
yeah,
uh,
yeah, definitely.
awesome. I think you have accomplished quite a lot to feel proud about yourself. That that doesn't mean that there's not more for you. So there's always room to grow
Yeah,
until you become the president, right? It's always more and more.
yeah. There's always something to learn. Absolutely.
Okay. What do you think are the main takeaways you got from the program?
Definitely, one of them could be like UI should only obey commands, and when you learn that what commands are and that some parts of your code should only obey commands, your code gets simplified a lot.
Yeah.
So, uh, let's say if we go to something more technical, for instance, those infrastructural details that should only obey commands are really easy to replaceable. So, uh, my to put it in few words, it would be uh, uh, a program shouldn't know more than than they should know, right? Basically, don't pollute your logic. That would be something in technically speaking, right? And more personally, soft skills, there's always room for improvement. And yeah, that's those two some are the ones that come to my mind right now.
Yeah, excellent. I guess you can extrapolate the first one. So
Mhm.
not just the views should be simple and just maybe responding to command and sending
Mhm.
events as well, but other layers of the code too. So the smaller, simpler composable components you have, the easier it is to
Yeah,
compose everything, to test in isolation, to maintain, to read, understand. Because I know we definitely read more than write code. We every time we have to make a change, we go in the area we need to, and we have kind of look around. So being able to understand that in a few seconds as opposed to looking at the 1000 lines
yeah,
view controller can be a very different experience. So before you make that change in that view controller, you have to like maybe spend a few hours writing some stuff on a piece of paper so you understand it. Like, but yeah, I'm not trying to change your the idea you got here because
hmm,
I think it's great. I was just saying that for me it falls in a broader category of maybe all the objects follow the same,
yeah,
all the types are simple and
yeah.
yeah,
The simpler, the better
yeah.
in everything that you work on. Yeah, that's that's for
Because
sure.
I think that's at the root of many principles and techniques is this simplicity and just have small components. I
Yeah,
think that's behind a lot of them. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
sure.
great.
Yeah, those are personally speaking and technically speaking. Technically, the simpler the better, and personally, keep improving. Improving. There's always room for improvement. Yeah, those are and learn how to improve.
Right.
Yeah,
Would you say seeing other people in our community achieve different things is also a motivator?
yeah, it is. It is because if they can, you can for sure. Just put the same amount of effort and move forward.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I also I like that because sometimes if you work in a maybe smaller team or maybe you're just a single developer on a specific project, you don't have these role models. You're kind of stuck in your own box. And the other thing I like about the community we have is there's so many people here with different backgrounds, with different contexts, and whenever you talk to them, you see like okay, they do this and that, and it's like
hmm,
very motivational sometimes to say okay, I can get out of the my comfort zone and learn some new things, or yeah, maybe apply for a new job, or many things
yeah,
happening there. I
yeah.
was curious.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is, and it helps you to to understand that, as you said, your background shouldn't be a limitation to do some things, right? For
right.
instance, I deliver code for companies in Palo Alto, and you could imagine that those kind of jobs are reserved to some certain kind of people, right?
Yeah,
But if you have the skills, you could do it. I mean, there's
yeah,
no way why you wouldn't do it. Definitely.
yeah. Especially for these kind of companies, they care a lot about what you bring to the table, and
Yep.
technical and soft skills as well, like you said.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's very important. What about your current job? Like, are you using all the things you learned in the program there? How was that?
Yeah. I'm got used to because sometimes in bigger teams, it's you should to adapt to what they're doing before doing like very breaking changes, right? And what I'm always aiming for is suggesting what can we do, to improve what we have, right?
Right.
Because one thing is why to change, let's say, like the way of work, you must like give like very valid reasons.
Yeah, strong reason. Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely if you want to, there's you could improve without doing too much changes. Sometimes uh, companies achieve like some level of of quality, and okay, some people spend like a lot of time reaching that, and coming and say let's change this, it's kind of hard. So instead of that, what I always try to do is I suggest, okay, uh, this works and it's working fine, but this part we could improve it in this specific way, or that's always what I'm trying to do. And yeah, that's the opportunities that I found so far to make an impact.
So you're trying to make maybe smaller changes incrementally. That did I
Yeah,
understand? Okay.
yeah, more
Okay.
incremental instead of breaking.
Yeah, totally. Because I mean, nothing scares a business team more than saying, "Okay, we gotta stop doing everything. We gotta break everything apart until we can do it again." So it's yeah, it's like that. I think that's one of the areas where I've seen people struggle with, and it's great that you found this approach of incrementally applying changes. Is where you try to get stuff you learn back at your job,
Yeah.
and of course you have to convince the people in the team. You have to
Mhm.
um, I don't know, train or provide support, explain what you're trying to propose, and
Yeah, I try to do more at a team level than a company-wide level. So with my team, we're around 3 iOS engineers, only in my team.
yes,
So yeah, I'm trying, to always uh, help them, or sharing mostly. That's what I try to do. Uh, the things that I know, just maybe definitely they will see the same value that I see on them. So yeah, it has worked so far. So yeah, I feel comfortable where I am right now.
that's very nice to see. Like I like seeing that in people that they are at the place where they feel good about themselves.
Yeah, yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
All right. So, any advice for people watching today?
The first advice would be join the program. It works, and it'll as long as you work or go through the program and study it, it'll bring results to you,
Yeah,
and I warranty definitely that it works. And once you join, go step by step. Definitely, that would be my other advice. Take the most of every lesson and try to get the most of it. And don't get frustrated if you're kind of back in the program. Let's say that you feel that you're not advancing as you wanted. It's better if you advance when you need to, right? So I did that a lot in the program. I didn't move from a lesson until I really understood what the lesson was trying to teach me. And yeah, that would be the other advice. Yeah.
right. So it's get the program and be patient and go through it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you have the knowledge, everything else will come with it.
Right.
New
That's very
opportunities.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's,
Very good. Okay. So if any company is looking for an iOS developer, where can they find you?
they can find me on LinkedIn with my name, Luis Piura, in Spanish. Yeah. So feel free to reach out. And yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I guess LinkedIn is probably one of the most used channels for recruiting and just networking in our uh, area. So um, yeah, it's definitely a good way to find developers.
Sure.
Okay, thanks for sharing that, and thanks for yeah sharing all your story. I really enjoyed talking to you. I think you have a quite quite interesting journey so far, and it's probably going to get better in the future as well.
Thanks a
Because
lot, Logan.
now you know how to learn, right? So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no stopping you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed the podcast as well.
Me too. Thanks for talking to me.
Sure.
For the people watching, if you want to learn more, just visit us at essentialdeveloper.com, and there you can find a bunch of free resources to improve your iOS skills. And you can also find us on the social channels like YouTube and so on. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.